Today on The Nation Speaks, Putin's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine is an ominous sign for Poland, and Poland is preparing for the worst. Geostrategic analyst Jacek Bartosiak joins us from Warsaw with a sobering message. Then in America Q&A, we ask if the U.S. should return to energy independence so we aren't reliant on other countries for fuel. Next, orphans are caught up in the fighting and in red tape in Ukraine, as we hear from Justin Hayslett, founder of Legacy Refuge, an orphan-care ministry in Ukraine. Finally, in our second America Q&A, do you think the U.S. has a responsibility to help Ukrainian refugees? Hello and welcome to The Nation Speaks. I'm your host, Cindy Drucker. Poland, unfortunately, understands all too well the reality of Russian aggression. They've fought 19 wars already. Most recently, World War II began when Germany invaded Poland from the west on September 1st, 1939. But 16 days later, Russian troops invaded from the east, and Poland wasn't free of Soviet control for another 50 years. In today's war, a big part of the story is Poland's remarkable whole-of-society effort to shelter about 2 million Ukrainian refugees. It's characterized in the media as tremendous goodwill and great generosity, along with accusations of racism, since Poland was not so welcoming to Syrian and Afghan refugees. But both characterizations miss what may be the most important point. Poles are reacting viscerally to an unwelcome reminder of the fragility of their own freedom. The scenario playing out is ominously familiar. Spiritually, Poland is already in this fight. In addition to absorbing the bulk of the refugees, Poland is a key staging area for weapons and supplies entering Ukraine, and Polish leaders have been urging the U.S. and NATO, and remember, Poland is a NATO country, to do more. So to understand what this war means and where it could go, we need the perspective from Poland. To share that perspective is Jacek Bartosiak, founder and CEO of Strategy and Future, a Warsaw-based think tank. Jacek's latest book came out just in January. The title translates as World War III is Coming. Will America Abandon Poland to Russia? Jacek, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on your show. Thanks.
I think everyone is surprised by the tenacity of Ukrainians in this fight, a tone set early on by President Vladimir Zelensky, who turned down America's offer to evacuate him, saying, "I need ammunition, not a ride." At the same time, it seems that Putin maybe hasn't brought his A-game to this fight, with progress a lot slower than expected. Jacek, what do you see as the best and worst case scenarios for where this is heading?
Yeah, it is true that the stamina of the Ukrainian military and the political system is really formidable. And people simply didn't expect that to happen, including, of course, the Russians. They didn't expect the Ukrainians to put up such fight. And the Russians suffer losses, suffer casualties, and they can't achieve their political objectives. Actually, the conduct of the war already suggests that it is impossible to achieve the political victory. The political objective and the victory was simply to the subduing of the Ukrainian people and accepting them the Russian sort of rule. And that's not going to happen. Even in the worst case scenario, it's not going to happen. If you ask me about the Polish perspective, the worst case scenario is that the total defeat of the Ukrainian military, the defeat and collapse of the Ukrainian state, and the occupation of the entire Ukraine, with Poland threatened from southeast as well, not only from the Belarusian border, which is already the Russian vassal, not only from the Kaliningrad enclave in the north, but also from the Ukrainian side, plus a major probably insurgency with probably staging area in Poland against the Russians in the western Ukraine. So, and of course, the further encroachments by Russians into the Polish security zone, which would be unavoidable in that respect. So that's the worst case scenario. That would, of course, entail the terror, mass terror against the Ukrainians who wouldn't like to be subordinate to the Russian rule, with all that it ensues. The best scenario is simply a major defeat of the Russian military, mowing down of its ground forces. That has happened, and it took 2 weeks to really, they suffered major losses. And if this were to continue, that would end up in a total collapse of the Russian military. And that usually undermines the political system of the Tsarist Russia or contemporary Russia, whatever you call it, or even the Soviet Union. And that has happened in the history many times. Usually when the Russian military loses the war, there is a major melting down of the political system. And that would be the best case scenario. And the best case scenario would be the removing Russia from the status, depriving Russia of the status of the great power, and just becoming a normal state of no formidable capabilities, so that it would accept that it's not an empire anymore and it has to live with neighbors in peace without imposing its political will as it wishes. So that would be the base case scenario. As always in life, it's probable that neither of those, either best or worst, will occur, but it's still too early to say what will be the final outcome of this war.
Is Poland preparing for war?
Yeah, I mean, the transformation here is profound in terms of the mindset, the attitude of the people and the political system, and of course the military. Our political leader announced the largest military overhaul and modernization program in the history of the Republic. We will be spending a lot more. We'll be loaning money from the world market even to field a military that can take up a fight.
In times of war, the most heartbreaking images are always children suffering, their worlds shattered apart, and you can see the trauma imprinting on their faces, even more so with orphans. And in the war in Ukraine, orphans are caught up not only in the fighting, but in red tape. With us is Justin Hayslett, the founder, managing director of Legacy Refuge, an orphan care ministry working in Ukraine for the last 5 years. Justin, you've been working with orphanages across Ukraine to try to get these kids to safety, provide them with food and clothing. Can you tell us what is the current situation?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having us on. And obviously the situation is not great. Over the last few weeks, there's been thousands of orphans who've been stuck in Ukraine, and ourselves, along with a lot of other, government people and organizations, have been working to get these kids out. Thankfully, a lot have gotten out, but there's still some that are stuck in there, and directors have waited too long, and they're kind of stuck in with the war now. And some of them have no hope to get out presently, and some of them are en route.
I understand that there's about 200 of these kids that are already in the process of being adopted in America, and those families are having trouble getting their kids out. Can you explain what that situation is?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. There's almost 200 kids that have been hosted. Ukraine does hosting programs through summer and winter. So these kids a lot of them gone to America, connected with families. These families stepped up, started the adoption process, and now some of them were weeks away from finalizing adoption. And here we are in the middle of this war, and we're getting no word from government officials that there's actually a possibility now to either adopt these kids or even get them to the families in America who already know them and love them through this difficult time.
Ukraine, are they just non-responsive, or they've stopped the whole adoption process?
What we've heard is because there's martial law, that basically the regular laws don't exist. Also, they don't have regular functioning government, so there's no way for them to process adoptions. And also they're wanting to keep kids closer into Europe, because they're saying, what we've heard is that, once it's over soon, they'll all come back. But obviously we know that this could be a lot longer than a month. This could be a 3 to 6 months or more where these kids are out here. And it's a shame to think that they can't connect to the families who already know them and love them through this traumatic time.